Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. Today, I am here with Richard Culatta, who serves as CEO of the International Society for Technology and Education, which has an acronym, ISTE, and it's a nonprofit serving education leaders around the world. Richard was appointed by President Obama as the director of the Office of Education Technology for the U.S. Department of Education, and currently, he serves as a senior fellow at NYU's GovLab and as a design resident for the San Francisco-based innovation and design firm IDEO or IDEO? How do you say it? IDEO. All right. So, Richard, thanks so much for being here with us today.
I'm so glad to be here. What a fun conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think, this crisis has been coming, but the pandemic brought it really to like a bursting point. And so what we hear from our parents all the time is this battle that is going on between, we're past what's like a healthy amount of time on technology. We're past that conversation. And it's like, how do I get my kid off their technology ever? So can you give us like a little bit of like, is there a line in your mind of, we loosely say addicted, right? My kid is addicted, but some people actually are addicted. Is there a line where you make that distinction?
So it's a great question. And look, as you set this up, right, you mentioned something that was really important, which is, COVID didn't suddenly cause this issue, right? This was something that was coming. It's been coming, this change for a long time, but it certainly accelerated it. So I think it's really, we feel it more than we did before. And what we're feeling is this relationship with technology that has changed, right? And it's interesting. So when I talk to a lot of parents, I work with a lot of teachers, and one of the things that I often hear is, my kid is addicted to their device, to technology. And it's probably important to say something at first is there are truly some cases where there's a real serious diagnosable addiction, right? There's a true addiction, and that needs to be addressed. And there are ways that can happen. And there's actually medical professionals that can get involved there. The vast majority of parents that I talk to said, my kid's addicted to the device. This is not really a medical addiction. This is a pattern. It's a pattern of behavior that has gotten out of balance, has gotten out of whack. And so I say that because sometimes when I talk to parents, we say, you really, there are solutions that you can deal with. There are ways that we can start to create balance when we realize that it's probably not an addiction in the same sense that, doing drugs or something is truly an addiction. Again, to be clear, there are cases where there is true addiction to a device. But with most kids, especially in this post-COVID world, this is it's their key to connect with their world. And so I think if we recognize that, the tools that we start to use, the levers that we can start to pull to find balance again are actually easier. It's easier to accomplish. And so that's my first thing, which is be careful with the A word, right? Be careful with the word addiction. Really, I think it's just a balance issue that we need to be talking about.
Okay, and we're gonna, for the purposes of this discussion, we are not going to venture into people who really qualify as having an addiction. And those people, can you recommend a resource for them to go to?
There are some good places online that you can go to, but truly, if you feel there's a true addiction, and we're talking about addiction, the signs of addiction are, not eating, not sleeping, not being able to, to for any reason pull away from a device. At that point, you need to talk to a doctor. Even just start with your family doctor. And I am not a doctor, right? I am a technologist. I work with families and good use of technology. So if it falls into that category, truly just talk to your physician. But for the vast majority of cases, they really are issues that we can help solve through some basic strategies.
Okay, so let's start with that. You talk about being out of balance right now, and that's true for us as adults also. It's not just our kids. But how do we kind of regain control there? And here, because we're talking to parents of teenagers, for our kids, how do we help them create balance in their life around technology?
Yeah. Well, so I have to comment first on your comment about it being harder, sometimes as hard for adults. we one of the things we did in our family, which I highly recommend, is we have device-free times. And so one of those times is dinner. If we're eating meals, and we try to eat meals, it's hard I have 4 kids, somebody's always running around somewhere, but as much as possible, we try to say we are going to eat dinner together, right? And dinner is a device-free time. And so we said our devices, they're allergic to food. They have to go over in, we have a little spot where we leave them, and that's where they go. Great. In about 2 days, our kids were like, sure, got it, no problem. Like 2 months later, my wife and I are still like sneaking a peek under the chair, right? So it is funny to note that sometimes we're very quick to criticize our kids' behavior, but sometimes we ought to be careful that we also have some behaviors that we have to look at. But really, this issue is how do we help create a new conversation, a new narrative, and the traditional conversation that I often hear, and I hear myself say it, right? So I'm not throwing stones at other people. Like I've been there. Is stop using your phone. All you do all day is sit around on your phone, right? Stop using it, right? It's this narrative of like, stop doing this, stop doing that, don't do that, don't sit on your phone all day. Your brain is turning to mush. It turns out that when we, as parents, one of the things that we do is we default to like what we don't want our kids to do when it comes to technology. But actually the much more effective thing to do is to propose what it is that you would like them to be doing instead. And again, that sounds so obvious, but I see it missing in so many of the family relationships, right? So you're like a kid sitting there like, here, I'm talking to my friends on my phone, I'm doing my thing, like, and all you want to do is just say, stop using your phone. Why? Right? And what would be a much healthier approach would be to say, hey, I don't have any problem with the fact that you're talking to your kids on your phone. I really don't. I love that that's how you're engaging with your friends, especially in a COVID world when you can't get together as often. But I also want to make sure that you're spending some time with your brothers and sisters. I want to make sure that you're spending some time with me as your father. I want to make sure that you're getting exercise. So can we find the right balance? Can we find some time and make sure that you are making time in your day for those other things as well? So that's a much more compelling request to a teenager to say, hey, it's not that I don't like this thing you're doing. It's that there's other things that are equally or more important than that we also have to make sure fit in. That's a narrative that can be very helpful.
So I think that's so helpful. I also think my tendency might be to think I'm going to get an eye roll, I'm going to get attitude. Ugh, I could never say that as their parent. Like they won't even believe those are my words. But what do you say to those people, me included, when you give this advice?
Yeah. Look, I get eye rolls all the time from my kids, right? I used to teach high school. I got eye rolls all the time. So I'm like, you can roll your eyes at me all you want, but this is still the conversation we're going to have. But look, in seriousness, I think part of it is it's helpful if you can set up some, have a conversation outside of the moment, right? So in a moment, you pull and do it as a family. If you have one kid, if you have more than one kid, come together as family and say, hey, look, COVID kind of thrown some things out of balance for us. And as a family, I think it's really important that we are able to help find that balance. And so we're going to start to do that in some different ways. And one way that I shared with you, and I can share a couple others in a second, but one way is to say, just talk about what are activities that are important to you, right? Yep. Talking to your friends and spending time with your friends on your phone. Great. Good. Got that. Check. What else? What are activities that matter to you? Do you like sports? Do you like any sort of outdoor activities? Do you like to eat? Do you like, what are those activities, and talk about them and say, great, how can we as a family make sure that no one activity is taking over all of the others? And sometimes I'll start with an activity that is not the device, right? So take food, for example, right? What if all you were doing all day was eating? You woke up in the morning, you ate all day. That's all you're doing, right? We'd go, wow, your eating is getting a little out of balance, right? As a parent, you'd want me to say, can we find some time to do some other things in the day other than eating? And usually even, with a snarky teenager, you can kind of get a little laugh out of that, right? And then afterwards, then you move to the technology part. And you say, hey, so what about this? What if the same thing is happening, but you're on your device or one of the other activities? So my role as a parent is going to be to help call out for you when it feels like something's getting out of balance. And then then later we hope they can make some good choices about it, but it starts by at least calling attention to this issue of balance, not to an issue of I hate your phone, right? That just sets up an argument. It's just like it's the textbook definition of start a fight with your teenager. And instead what we want to do is say, I'm helping call out balance because you yourself have said that you want to be able to do a variety of things in your life, and I'm going to help call out when it feels like you need a readjustment in that balance.
So I think your oldest is 16, right?
Yes.
So Jennifer has an 18-year-old, and she says, that's tough with an 18-year-old. But, and yes, Jennifer, I would totally agree. I want to say a however here, give his ideas a shot, right? Like, I mean, talking to our kids sometimes can surprise us, I think. Yeah. Have you had that experience when you suggest it to people?
Sure, and first of all, to say to Jennifer, it is really important to know the difference between. So I have a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, and then I have two younger kids. But the language I use when I'm talking to my 14-year-old and my 16-year-old is very different, even in those 2 years. Likewise, talking to an 18-year-old is very different. I mean, essentially, they're kind of almost an adult at that point, believe it or not, right? Like, and so some of the language that you're going to use, that the examples I'm going to share here, will need to be adjusted slightly. But I will say, I've had this happen a number of times where I'll be talking to a group of parents, and I'll say, "Hey, here's a strategy that I found can be helpful." And the parents will walk in going, "Anything, tell me anything. I will do anything to try to help get balance back in my life." And I'm like, "Great, try these two things." And they'll be like, "Well, I can't do that." Right? And so yes, you need to adjust to your kids, but I think you'd be surprised sometimes how kids will respond. I have my 14-year-old who, bless his heart, is kind of a grouchy middle schooler a lot of times. Lovely kid some moments, and some moments he's a grouchy teenager. But we've had this conversation about balance and finding balance over time. We don't just drop it on him all at once. We sort of talk about it as a family. We reinforce it. And now it's to a point where if he's been up in his room playing the same game for 2 hours, I can walk in and I will say, "Hey, how's balance going for you today?" And sometimes he will literally just be like, "Here, just take my phone," right? Like he knows. It's just like, "You got me," right? And so these are not changes that will happen immediately, right? If we have years and years of habits on how we use technology, it's not going to change in a second. But slowly, as we start to say, let's call out what balance looks like, let's have these conversations, you will, in most cases, I have seen that you do start to see a shift and at least a greater recognition from our kids of what the real issue is. It's not that we hate their phone. And if you do hate your phone, if you hate their phone, that's your problem. Like, really, I don't know how else to say it. Like, if your goal is just to hate phones and get phones to go away, you need the help, right?
Well, that ship has sailed.
That ship has sailed. But if the goal is not to hate their phone and take their phone away, if the goal is to help them be a balanced person, they will see that eventually. They will recognize in most cases, oh, I get it. You're trying to help me be a healthy person. Just like you don't want me to eat cheeseburgers and Twinkies all day, every day. It's not that you hate cheeseburgers and Twinkies. It's that you want me to be healthy. You don't want me to be 400 pounds by the end of my senior year in high school, right? That's the approach that we need to take to this conversation.
So Jennifer adds a detail that I think changes it slightly, which is that gaming is the issue that she's dealing with.
Yeah. And thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for adding that. And it is true. And so it's important. Actually, I'm so glad you said that. I mean, I'm not glad that you're dealing with this issue, but I'm glad you added that point, because here's another mistake that I see over and over again, which is a focus on device use, right? Stop using your device. Stop using your phone. And really, what we need to be helping our kids do is tease out the fact that different activities in a virtual space, right, have different levels of value associated with them. So for example, let's say your kid was on a device for 2 hours, and I said to you, for those 2 hours, they were talking to their grandmother or their grandfather, who they haven't been able to see because of COVID. And I said, how do you feel about their device use, right? You'd probably be like, oh, great. That's great, right? If I then said that kid was on the device, for 2 hours looking at porn, right? Your response would be like, whoa, that's a problem, right? Maybe if it's 2 hours looking at games, maybe that's also a problem. If it was 2 hours writing a story, writing poetry, that's probably, I'd say that's probably okay. The point that I'm making here is we have to be really careful that we identify very specifically what the problem is, or where the lack of balance comes from. And so an activity, the conversation, and Jennifer, with your kid's case, may be a conversation that is, hey, what is a reasonable amount of time to spend in a given day playing a single game? Right? Let's just talk about that as we talk about our balance. It's not that if you want to use your phone, great. If you want to do, but there are certain activities that have greater value for you because they're healthy for you, they're good for your relationships, and there are other activities that we're not saying don't do them, but the value is lower, and therefore the amount of our life spent giving them attention should also be lower. And that's an important distinction to tease out, right? Don't just say, oh, the phone is bad. It's what is the activity that is happening? And if you want to spend time on your phone, there's a variety of activities that we basically in our house have unlimited amounts of time for certain activities. But when it comes to gaming and others, we're going to treat that a little bit, we're going to talk about how much is appropriate, and it's going to be a much lower amount of time than doing something like talking to grandma or writing or learning how to do an activity by watching videos on YouTube.
All right. I love the idea of having the conversation with your kid. Like, what do you think is reasonable? I also want to give a shout out to Katie, who, before you even got to this, said, my rule is content, context, and connection. Not all screen time is the same.
Katie, thank you. Oh my gosh, that is so important. And sometimes I compare this, by the way. I keep using food analogies because clearly I like to eat. But when you think about this idea of screen time, I hate the idea of screen time, by the way. I know it's well intentioned, but it sets up some dysfunction. And the reason is this. And I compare it to food, just to go with Katie's example. Imagine if we had food time in our house. And we say, it's 7:00, it's food time for an hour. You can eat all the crap you want. You can eat, chocolate and candy and Twinkies and soda, all you want for 1 hour. And then as soon as the hour is over, food time is over, and no food again until, next time it's food time. That is not setting up healthy eating behavior for our kids, right? What is much healthier in our family, you can drink water and eat fruit anytime you want. No permission, anytime you want fruit and water, go for it, right? Then we have meal times where we have a variety of healthy foods. And then sometimes for a birthday or for a dessert or when somebody's just had a rough day, we pull out a couple of Twinkies, we have some ice cream, right? We make some cake. But the idea isn't that start here at 9:00 and from 9 to 10, eat whatever junk you want and then it's over. We're trying to create healthy balance in what we're eating when. And that's exactly the other way to say that would be content, context, and connection, like Katie just said, right? And so that's how we got to think about the device use as well. It is that different activities have different value, and we got to recognize that, and we got to reinforce that. Not all food and not all apps are created equal.
Okay, I want to move into the idea of privacy.
Yeah.
So you have a lot to say on that I think is interesting and a little bit of a new thought for me about it.
Yeah. So Susan, we were talking a little bit about this the other day, and that is that we have, I think this idea that as parents we want to respect our kids' digital privacy. And I appreciate that. And I do, as a parent, I do try to respect my kids' privacy in a number of ways. That's important. It's important to have them know that they can have their space and do that. So I'm not saying that we should be in our kids' business all the time without ever giving them some privacy. The challenge is when we act like the stuff that happens on this device is private from us, it can create this sense in a kid's mind, especially a teenager's mind, right? That stuff is actually private. And the fact of the matter is, it's not. There is nothing on these devices that are truly private. Even if it's not being sent out on social media, if it's sent out on social media, clearly it's not private. Even if it's not, the ability to access and share and get into devices, it's a concept that we don't want to reinforce with our kids. And so with our kids, one of the things that we say right away when they get their phone is, there is nothing on that thing that's private. There's nothing on there that I can't see. There's nothing on there that my wife can't see. because that helps reinforce them that truly there's nothing on there that the world can't see. And that's the mode that we want to get into. And so one of the ways that we teach this to, especially to our younger kids, is if there's anything in your life that you would want to do behind a closed door, right? Changing your clothes, right? In our house, we change clothes behind a closed door, right? That's what we do. Having a moment where you are, it was sleeping, right? When we sleep, you close your door at night to sleep, right? Anything that you would do in a private moment, these should not be there. And that just helps reinforce the fact that if you feel like you need to be private enough to close your door, this thing is not private enough to be in that space. And that has really helped shift some things around a little bit. It's helped our kids understand, and I've talked to other families who have done this, and it's helped them understand that this idea of we won't look at your device, and because our parents are not looking at their device, the thought is that it's now a secure private thing, which is 100% not true. And so if parents are saying, no, this isn't private, I can look at it anytime, it helps reinforce that idea that it's not private from anyone, which is actually probably one of the most important lessons that we can teach our kids about their devices.
I do think it's such a healthy pivot. To me, it's like you blast your news and your pictures on a billboard on the highway. Yeah. And then I say, I won't look at the billboard because you have a right to your privacy.
I know, it's crazy. And it's funny when we see that, we're like, oh yeah, that is weird. Obvious. Why am I the only one in the world that can't see it? But literally everybody else can, right? And so, so it's fine. And again, to reinforce, do you want privacy? Sure. Are there moments, do you need to have a conversation with a friend in private? Got it. You can do that in your room. You can do that by, if you need to make a phone call or something, right? But if you are moving into the virtual world, you just got to know it's not private, and that's okay. We use it all the time, but just don't think that it is private, and that will save a whole bunch of sticky situations down the road by having this misunderstanding that it actually is a private space.
I love that. Okay, I'm just going to share Jennifer and how she's managing this. She uses the Bark app for her 15-year-old.
Bark's a great app. Absolutely great app. It's a good way to do it. And I don't hide that from our kids, right? I'm like, yeah, no, we monitor all internet traffic in our house. Absolutely. Bark is great if you're not familiar with it, because it will both monitor use on your phone, on your network, but if the kid takes the phone to another network out somewhere else, it still has some filtering and some control, and that's really great. I personally will share those statistics. So if you use Bark or some of the others, there's some parental controls on the device too, and they'll show you amount of time on different activities. And so sometimes I'll sit down with my kids and I'll say, hey, we've been talking about balance and having good balance here. Let's just take a look at what we're doing. And we might see, wow, 6 hours on this one, this one game or whatever it is. And we go, how do we feel about that being balanced? 6 hours on one thing, on any one thing in your life? If you've hit 6 hours in the shower, would that be a good balance? Right? No, I don't think so. Okay, well, let's look at these numbers. So sharing the analytics, the data from tools like Bark and others can be really helpful. One other thing I should mention real quick on that is some people don't know that your device providers also, right? All the major device providers, Verizon, AT&T, they also have a similar service that you can enable, which will provide some monitoring and controls, parental controls on devices as well.
Great. Okay. I want the last question to be about something that you encourage families to do, a device use agreement. So what is it? Yes. And what does it look like? What should we consider as families?
I will happily share that with you. And in fact, Susan, I'm just finishing writing a book for families on how to do this sort of stuff, right? How to have healthy balance with
When's it coming out?
It will be out in July, so maybe we can find another time to have a conversation after it comes out. For sure. But what I'll share a little sneak preview of the book. It's called Digital for Good, and one of the things that I include in there is a sample device use agreement. And and I encourage all families to do this. A device use agreement is like a contract, and it simply says, here are the conditions in our family, if you are using our wireless and our cell phone service, which we're paying for, by the way, if you're using our service, here's the agreement in order to use it. You don't have to. We can absolutely change the password on it so you don't have it, and we could, end your data plan if you want to. No, that's your choice. But if you would like to take advantage of the connectivity that I'm going to provide you, here's the agreement. And in that agreement, we set up what we expect are, some areas, of course, where we expect to not have certain things happen, right? And that's where we talk about things like balance. We say we want to make sure that there's a good balance, that the activities on your device doesn't take over other parts of your life. But here's the part which, I just see missed all the time, which is include the section of the activities you do want them to be doing. Right? It's not all about don'ts. It's also about do's. So in our device use agreement, it says, in order to use a device in our family and to have the connectivity paid for, we expect you to capture family moments. When there's a birthday, capture that, right? Capture pictures. We have this activity we do in our family where everybody keeps a little running notepad on their device. And when somebody says something funny, just a goofy thing that somebody says, and you have 4 kids in the house, there's a lot of goofy things that get said. They write it down. And then at the end of the year, we compile all of those and we turn those into our Christmas card. It's just a list of all the crazy things people in our family said. But so that's one of their responsibilities, is capture these funny moments that come out during the year. Those are the sorts of things that we put in there. We put another one in our device use agreement is, we want you to be learning new things using technology. So get on YouTube, but learn how to do something new. So putting that agreement, here are the things we want you to watch out for. Here are the things we expect you to do with your device. And the last part of it is, here's what to do when something goes wrong. If you get into a situation that feels uncomfortable, come tell us. If you get into a moment where you feel like there's lack of balance, just come hand us your phone. People are shocked to know that our kids, they've actually done it, right? Not all the time, of course, but I've had times where I've had a kid that's come to me and said, hey, you got to take it. I'm way out of balance, right? We put that in a device use agreement. We both sign it. They have input into it as well. They look over it, they read it, they see what they want on there. And then every year around the time of their birthday, we update it. We look at it, we update it, we make sure we still feel good about it, and we both sign again. Super simple, but it has made a world of difference. And when I talk to families, they're like, why don't we do that? Every school does it. In order to get on the network at school, you have to sign a device use agreement. Why don't we have device use agreements in our families? So that is a great tip that you can start to do and really makes a big difference. It's not legal language. It's just here's what we agree to do. Here's what you agree to do. And we're going to review it periodically.
Is there any punitive part to that agreement, like consequences for misuse or anything like that?
Absolutely. But what we do, again, is we want to set it up in a way that they have input. So what we've come up with our kids is we've said, if we see, we have language for this. And again, I'll actually put one of these in the book that's coming up. But we say in here, the ability to use the device and have this freedom comes with trust. And so when we feel like there is a lack of trust, we start to remove some of the opportunities, right? So we may just say you need to take a break from your phone for a couple of days, or for your device, and that's just as a way to help us make sure that there's trust. We also make it really clear that if something is out of whack, either out of balance, either something inappropriate happened on the device, if they come to us, because the goal is we want to start a conversation, especially when they're young kids, right? We want them to feel like if something goes wrong, if somebody says something inappropriate, if they see an inappropriate picture, we want them to come to us and get comfortable having that conversation. So when we say in there, if you come to us and tell us what happens, there may still be a consequence, but it will be much less than if we discover it, and we will discover it if we discover it at some point down the road. And so we want to sort of reward that behavior early on. And the goal is, and I hope anybody who has teenagers should know this, never freak out. No matter what they show you on the phone, no matter what happened, do practice looking in front of the mirror, right? Have your significant other, whoever it is, pretend to come to you with it and practice a poker face. Don't freak out. But the idea is you can come to me with anything. I will help you resolve it. But if you come to me first, there may be some consequences. We may need to take the phone away. We may need to delete an app, but they will be far less than if you don't come to me, because now the breach of trust is greater.
Excellent. I want to end with Molly, who shares device use agreement. Brilliant. At home, at work, when expectations are set, clearly explained and understood, everything flows so much better.
That's it. That's it. And what we have not done, and this is the big dysfunction in our technology lives, is as the relationship with technology has changed, we haven't set those expectations. And our teenagers are getting mad at us because we're trying to take away everything that they care about. We're getting mad at them because they're on the device. And really, most of it is just, whoa, pause, stop. Let's set some expectations. Let's get on the same page. And then the solutions actually get a lot easier.
Richard Culatta, thank you so much for being here with us. Thanks everybody for joining. Yes, Jennifer, parenting is so hard, but thanks to Richard, we have a bunch of new tools to put in place right now. And we'd love to hear back from you if you've tried anything and it works. Good luck, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks.